Hi, everyone. My name is Alana Jasker. I am a third-year graduate student in the department in the Cognitive Science division. I work with Michael Frank. So thank you all for coming. So we thank you for all the questions that you sent along. We're going to go through them in kind of a thematic order. If you have any more questions that come up, feel free to send them to any of the hosts. So there's 5 of us in the panel, so send it to any of us and we'll hopefully get it to it at the end. And we're also going to ask people to not show their videos for this session, just so we can make sure that we have like kind of a focus on the panel discussion going forward. Yeah, as I said, I'm a third-year graduate student. So we have 3 graduate students on this panel, as well as 2 faculty members who will give their own brief introduction, but just so you know who I am. Yeah, so I study human learning and decision-making from a computational perspective. And I'm actually going to, Mahalia, do you mind sharing the screen? And then I'm gonna actually spotlight everyone so we can see everyone. One moment. Okay, great. So hopefully we are all the focus for you now. Great. Mahalia and Utah, would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, maybe I will go first. So hi, everyone. My name is Utah. I'm a 5th-year graduate student in this department. So I'm on my way to get my dissertation done. I'm working in Jim Morgan's infant research lab. So our lab's main focus is on the language development among infants and young children. Although we are also doing a lot of psycholinguistic studies with adults. So should I cover more things?
I think that's good for now. We can get into more things as we go forward. Yeah. All right, Mahalia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mahalia. I'm a 2nd-year graduate student, and I work with Amitai Shamhav. I study cognitive control, decision-making, and motivation, and I'm particularly interested in how those mechanisms develop.
And also, as we have, as I said, 2 faculty members with us. So David, would you mind giving just a brief introduction of who you are? And then we'll also move on to Rebecca.
Sure. I'm David Better. I'm a professor in our department, as well as the director for graduate studies. My area of focus is cognitive control and executive function. I'm a cognitive neuroscientist, so I'm interested in both the mind, but also the brain as well. And yeah, I'm just happy to be here, and I welcome everybody here. We're really looking forward to going through your questions.
All right, and Rebecca, would you love to introduce yourself and also maybe start us off with giving a kind of a brief overview of CLPS and kind of the department more broadly?
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to welcome everyone to this preview. We're excited that so many of you decided to join us. I'm Rebecca Burwell. I'm the professor and chair of Cognitive, Linguistic, and Psychological Sciences, affectionately known as, and more easily known as CLPS. I am a behavioral neuroscientist. I'm interested in the neural base of behavior. My research addresses mostly memory and attention. And more recently, we've gotten into social behavior. We use animal models. And like most of the faculty, I have a laboratory with postdocs and graduate students from multiple programs, research staff, and undergraduates. We have a lot of undergraduates in our labs at Brown, and they provide opportunities for graduate students to actually learn some mentoring skills. So what I want to do is just briefly give you an overview of the department. Our department is fairly, well, it's kind of new and old. So we're a newly formed department that merged from psychology department, which was founded in 1892, with the more recently founded cognitive and linguistic sciences department. And about 10 years ago, we just decided that it made more sense to put us all together. And we joined to form this, incredibly multidisciplinary and a department to effectively study the mind, brain, behavior, and language. And this has been really a wonderful change, and we think it makes for a really exciting department. We currently have, I think, 27 faculty with a few open slots. So, you know, if you came here, there would be some brand new faculty coming in, and we have multiple overlapping areas, cognitive science, psychology, behavioral neuroscience, cognitive neuroscience, if I didn't say that, developmental, perception, computational. It's a very rich environment. We also, when the two departments came together, they renovated the Metcalf building for us. It was really a very nice, extremely well done renovation, and we're most of the labs and the offices are in that building. There's a small animal research component in our department, and we have labs that are also newly renovated about, I would say, maybe a block from the main building. And that's actually one of the great things about Brown, is that it has some aspects of a large campus and some aspects of a small campus. For example, the basic science departments in the medical school, they're right here on campus. So it's just like a 4-minute walk to go and participate in seminars and workshops that are provided by other departments. And we also have, I think, another unique thing about Brown is that there is this institute, the Carney Institute for Brain Sciences, which is an umbrella institute that was designed to integrate, multiple disciplines, computer science, applied math, engineering, even economics, with psychology and cognitive neuroscience and the other life sciences, to all focus on understanding the brain. The department itself is, as I said, it's multidisciplinary. We have 5 concentrations, which is what we call majors here for undergraduates: psychology, cognitive science, cognitive neuroscience, behavioral decision-making, and linguistics. And we also have 3 graduate programs, which David Better will tell you more about. Let's see. I wanted to say a little bit more about the Carney Institute for Brain Sciences, because you might be wondering what that means for you. In addition to these events and workshops that they provide, they also, that group provides support for graduate students, graduate fellowships, seed money for projects, support for your advisors, communicating what we do to the media, and there are other things that I'm sure I'm not thinking about right now. I hope a little bit later in the program, I'll get to say something about what it's like to live in Providence and what it's like to live in Rhode Island. So again, good to see you all, and I'm looking forward to the grad preview today.
Awesome, thank you so much, Rebecca. Cool, and so I guess as we're getting into it, so you mentioned that we, and I guess David will talk about this a little bit more too, is that in our graduate program, we have both a cognitive science department, or like a cognitive science division, a psychology degree, and a linguistics degree. And a lot of questions that we had coming in from people who registered was, what was kind of the difference between psychology and cognitive science? And so David, I was actually wondering if you could like start us off talking a little bit about what the difference between those two programs are.
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to do that. I think I'll even give a little bit of an overview, because I want to kind of just, don't want to take too long, but I thought maybe give a quick overview of our programs for everybody, and then also maybe just a quick view of the application process, the components in the application, and how we evaluate it, because and then we can get into some questions as well. So just in general, I want to say that our programs are generally designed to, and our goal really is to educate and to train scientists and scholars who are going to make contributions to society. That means through their research, through their teaching, through applied work, as well as through their service to others. Okay, and so we acknowledge, I think, that as our approach to that is that if you're interested in the mind, you're going to be, whether it's from a psychology perspective or linguistics perspective or a cognitive science perspective, is that the exciting discoveries are often made at the boundaries among traditional sciences, right? You hear this, you're going to hear interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary a lot today. And that's because that's our approach. Our view is that some of the most interesting ideas are often borrowed or from other disciplines that have worked on something, and then you apply them in a new area and you find interesting and important ways to approach problems. And the mind is a great example of that over the history of the study of the mind. And so, within our department, we have there's a heavy emphasis on interdisciplinarity, and also the way our department interacts and our graduate students interact with each other across different labs, across different research groups, and with other departments. So we have a lot of close relationships with other departments ranging from neuroscience to computer science to applied mathematics to public health, depending on the kinds of work that our students are doing. And we really encourage that, and our goal in our graduate program is to allow students to form their own education within the requirements that we have, but in order to build their particular unique scholarship for the problem that they're interested in. So with that in mind, we have 3 interdisciplinary programs then. We have psychology, cognitive science, and linguistics. Psychology and the psychology and the cognitive science PhD programs are, in terms of their requirements, are almost identical. There's one small difference in one of the requirements between the two, but they are almost identical, and that's by design. And the reason is that we want our students in both programs to be essentially trained together. So they're all, as a group, they go through their training. We also don't really think there's a way for us in a kind of top-down way to say, this is a prescribed set of things you do to become a psychology PhD, and this is the set of things you would do for a cognitive science PhD. Rather, students sort of self-select, is what we find. So even though the requirements are there, those are really just a framework with which students then choose their courses, they choose their advisor and research focus and so forth. And we do find that they're at the other end, you do find sort of a clustering around cognitive science and psychology in terms of the kinds of programs that the students build for themselves. But for the consequence for our students is that basically you can choose which PhD you want. Do you want, you're going to go have basically the same requirements from our perspective, and you decide which degree. But there can be lots of reasons for that. Some students choose it based on the kinds of jobs or the kinds of things they're going to be applying for and so forth. But you have that flexibility. The linguistics program does have distinct requirements. Linguistics program includes both a focus on formal linguistics, traditional fields, including semantics, phonetics, phonology, syntax, and so forth, as well as disciplines that are, again, kind of interdisciplinary, that bridge between those things of cognitive linguistics, psycholinguistics, sociolinguistics, computational linguistics. And that's actually where I think we really excel, because again, linguistic students and language students are trained right along with psychology and cognitive science students as well. And they really interact with each other. And so it's a great way to broaden that kind of training in language. One more thing I just want to say about our PhD programs is, you might wonder, and it's a good question to ask, like, what does one do with a PhD in cognitive science or psychology or linguistics? And the answer turns out to be a lot of things. Our students, I'm very proud of our track record. Right? In the last few years, we place 100% of our graduates in jobs post-graduation. Now, many of them end up in jobs that are in the sciences and specifically in the academic sciences. So many go on to postdocs in academic labs and become postdoctoral scientists in academic labs, and from there, many enter into academia. But there are also many who continue on to non-academic careers, and across a wide range of sectors, actually, ranging from obviously in industry, ranging from data science to human factors, consulting and finance, pharma and biotech. We recently actually had an event here where we invited a number of our alums back to talk to us, and they came from companies like Google, Spotify, Facebook, and so forth. So there's a lot of, it's a very marketable degree. They also, they'll go into other sectors too, including publishing, government, and so forth. Okay, so it's a very versatile degree in that way. So I want to get to the questions. I just want to give you a quick overview of the application process and, in general. So you can go to our website, and I encourage you to do that to take a look at the application, what the components of the application, as well as looking at our faculty and seeing and identifying the kinds of research that people are doing in the program. The main components of the application, however, are a personal statement, a writing sample, and the letters of recommendation. There's also transcripts and other components, but I really want to focus on those three because those are really crucial to the evaluation of a candidate. All right, your personal statement really is a chance for you to tell us, what are your goals for graduate school? Right, where do you, and this is both in the short term, obviously, what do you want to do if you came to Brown, and what do you want to do after Brown? Right now. And obviously, it's not a contract that can change over the course of things, but nonetheless, it'd be nice to know you're thinking right now in terms of what your goals are for your training. And if you can make those as specific as possible, that really helps us assess. What we're trying to assess is how well we can train you. Are you interested in doing things that we train here? And and one example of that is, have you identified faculty who could serve as mentors based on the kinds of research that they do? And if that's specific, that's really good. You have to be careful that it's not too specific in the sense that you propose a specific experiment that everything hinges on. But if you're generally interested in the research areas and the expertise a faculty member has, that's a real help for us to understand that our program is right for you. Another component is the writing sample. So the writing sample is a chance for us to see. It can be anything. First off, I should say, it doesn't have to. Some people do give us papers that have been published and things like that, but it really can be any bit of original writing that you have done. It could be a term paper from a course in college. It could be just something that you wrote, a blog post or an essay, a position piece. The main thing we were looking for there is an example of your thinking, like how well you engage in critical thinking and how you structure that for communication. Okay, and so something that anything that communicates that well is what we're looking for. That's the answer to the question, is this count as a writing statement? And the final thing are the letters of recommendation. And this is really important, is that you locate strong letter writers who are able to give us a sense of you, who you are, how you train, how you'll train, and can give us a fuller sense of their observations of you. That means, as much as possible, find people to write letters for you who've had some contact with you, can really talk in direct ways about you and who you are, as much as possible. And I think that's a really important component of the application. We are not requiring the GRE, and in fact, we do not accept it this year. So it's not an optional thing. So really our evaluation is based on these components. Now, over the way that we will evaluate those applications is as follows. Our deadline is December 1st. Our faculty will get together and we'll evaluate all of the applications that come in. We tend to have somewhere between 200 to 250 applications per year. We read all of these, and we will select a subset to interview on that from that initial evaluation. We interview those virtually, so that'll be especially this year, and that'll be over either Zoom or Skype or the telephone, whatever works best. And then from those, we select a further subset that would, in a usual year, come to campus for a preview day. This year, it'll probably be virtual, but that'll be an opportunity for that group to learn, not just us to further learn about them, but also for them to learn more about us, to get an idea of our program, what we do, and everything else. And the goal is basically, by the time we make our decisions on offers, which will usually be late February, early March, that we have a good sense of who you are, but you also have a good sense of who we are, so you can make an informed decision. Now, the last thing I want to point out is you don't have to make any decision about any graduate school until April the 15th. That is for US graduate schools, that is the universal deadline for making a decision. So nobody can tell you that you need to make a decision earlier or before that date, right? You can take your time and make your choice all the way up into April 15th for any school. All right, so that's about all I had to say. I'm happy now to turn it back to Alana for some questions.
Great. Thank you so much, David, for that overview. So yeah, I guess I have a couple different follow-up questions on kind of this application process and things that that faculty look for, and maybe advice from graduate students as well. So the first thing I guess I want to ask, just very quickly, because we've actually had this question a couple different times, both on the chat and in the registration, is like with the writing sample, is there any particular like page limit or page length that you would want to have for students who are applying this year? Or is it just to give whatever length is sufficient for showing their critical thinking skills?
Yeah, I think you answered it there. I mean, there isn't a page limit, right? So again, really the question is does this writing, first off, it needs to be original writing. It really needs to be from you. That's very important. But yeah, it's enough that we can evaluate sort of the way you think and how you communicate. And so that could be, that can be as I said, a full term paper. It could be, 20, 25 page document. It also could be, a few pages if it's a really incisive position piece or something. Really, there's no limit here. It's your chance to show us, right, how you think.
Awesome. And kind of going back to this idea of, fit and personal statement and which faculty would be, good for you to apply to work with. So I was wondering if for the graduate students, if you had any advice in terms of, how to really assess like what the research program of a particular faculty member might be to better assess whether they would be a good person to reach out to and see if they were taking students for this coming term. So Mahalia or Utah, I don't know if you want to take it.
Yeah, okay, I'll go first. So I think a good idea is to start from their either personal web page or the pages of their labs. Try to figure out their main focus, their research areas, and maybe if you have enough time just to skim through their publications and try to find if there's one or two that interest you the most, and maybe take a look at them. And also, I think during the interview, the prospective students have the opportunity to get in touch with several faculty members. And that is also a good chance to get to know what options there are and get to know their research a bit more than what can be found on the web pages.
Mahalia?
Yeah, I would second all of that. And I would also reiterate what David brought up in the beginning when he said that, they'll be evaluating whether they can actually teach you and if you can learn things from the department. When you're choosing an advisor, you have to think about they're an expert in something. And so is that the thing that you want to get expertise in your training? And so no one is going to have like all the things that you would ever want to be an expert in. And so really deciding what you want to spend, the majority of the next like 5 years learning about and getting their expert training in is how you have to go about making that decision. And that can be hard, but it's well worth it when you find a good fit there.
Yeah, and just to piggyback that off of both those comments, it's also good to come in with a specific like general idea of where you want to go with your research, but also I think what makes this department really great is that there are so many, like it is a very collaborative department, and I think we really value in the department having these like larger conversations. And yeah, just to I guess pick off of what Utah said, I remember very distinctly having a conversation with David during my interviews and it being like, oh, this was such a neat like different ways of thinking and different perspectives. And I think being really open to different ideas is also crucial in both not pigeonholing yourself into a very specific research program and showing that you're adaptable and flexible and can like think more broadly and how your research fits into a larger context or interplays with other faculty members and CLPS. I think is good to think about in preparing for the personal statement and for interviews going forward. Cool. And then I guess another, and I don't know, David or Rebecca, if you have anything to add on to that before I kind of transition a little bit.
Yeah, I might add a little bit to that. I think sometimes, especially if you're just right out of college or you're just starting to think about graduate school, it sometimes can be kind of overwhelming because you're interested in so many things. And I found that, we as scientists, we have this problem because we're curious and we're broadly interested. But one way you can kind of figure out what you're interested in is that if you start looking at faculty and researchers' websites, what do you spend most of your time on? You know, which websites and which parts of those websites capture and maintain your interest the longest? And that can sometimes help you narrow down to a sort of subset of your broader interest. Because like I said, if you're interested in graduate school, you're probably have a high curiosity level. And at some point, you need to sort of home in on what's essential there to your interests, what you want to go forward in.
And I'll just add also that our department also does have a lot of opportunities for both for co-advising as well as, and this is sort of building on what Alana was saying, and collaboration between different groups. So even if you have a primary person you're interested in, or you're interested in one particular area, it can be possible to do multiple kinds of research. For instance, I know Mahalia was interested in development as well as cognitive control, and kind of came in interested in sort of the ability to train across different groups and so forth on those disciplines. And from a faculty perspective, we're sort of at a stage where it's very hard for us to do, I mean, kind of what Rebecca was saying, we're curious about much more than we can do. And often it's graduate students that allow those collaborations to happen, that can build bridges and interesting new directions, right, with others in the department. And so that's actually something we very much encourage. And I think it's that can also, come across in your interests, your personal statement.
Great. Yeah. And just to build a little bit more off of that. So I guess this is getting more into kind of life in the department. But yeah, there is a lot of people had questions about, CLPS itself inherently is interdisciplinary, but like, how does that actually manifest within the department itself? And yeah, there is a lot of back and forth between different labs. Like I attend multiple different people's lab meetings at different times. There's different brown bag series that are open for everyone to attend to. So there's like a developmental brown bag, there's a social brown bag, cognitive brown bag, am I missing? Perception and action, linguistics, or like language and linguistics. So there are a lot of different talks, and even beyond the department, for instance, Carney Institute hosts its own talks. I personally, I don't think I said this, my background was initially in computer science. And so I go actually to a lot of the robotics and the applied mathematics talks. And so as a culture, there really is this constant kind of flow of information going across different departments, both internally and externally.
And I would just follow up on what Alana said, is that you see the same people. So all the people, like everyone has this curiosity to be, and really is thinking about like how I can apply these things and learn from these other disciplines. And so it's not that you see only like linguistics majors or concentrators at the linguistics talks, and only the developmentalists at the developmental brown bag. You actually see everyone kind of commingling across all of these different talks.
Cool. Anything else to add on to that general topic?
Yeah, there's a question that came over the chat. I think is a really good one. It asks sort of how does one balance in your personal statement discussion of, your own background and your own sort of ability and your plans for the future. And this is a really good question. I think, there's not a strict proportion. I think, you need, it's a good idea to have both, and they should also, it also is helpful if they're connected, right? We have a sense of, how did your interests grow out of the experiences you had, right? And so it is the case also, personal statements convey things about, the skills you've had, the kinds of work you've done. And I'm glad this question got asked. Is actually an important aspect of that is trying to convey to us, if you've done research, right, if you've done this kind of work before, to what degree has it, tell us about it. And because that helps us also see that how your intellectual involvement in that, right? That it was, you were sort of had ownership of that work, and it led to your interest. So yeah, I'm not really answering the question as in like, well, you want 40% of this and 60% of that. I guess the main thing is that both components are very important. And I should say the future directions doesn't have to be long and exhaustive. It can be short. It's just, specificity and match matter a lot.
Great. So yeah, I guess the one question that popped up a lot too was, well, is a particular, I've done all my research, I figured out who I want to work with or what matches there might be, but, is my particular faculty member that I'm interested in working with, or the 2 or 3 actually taking advisors or advisees for this round. And so, yeah, I guess generally the advice that was given to me, and maybe Rebecca and David can build off of this, is definitely to reach out to faculty members and to verify, whether they're taking advisees or if they're open to being co-advised. I think being specific and what you're asking for when you reach out to them is really important. And yeah, David and Rebecca, I don't know if you have any advice in terms of like how to reach out to faculty members or what faculty members look for when they receive those types of emails.
I would say that it's better if the email is pretty concise, but you also want to give enough information to say a little bit about what your background is and what your interests are and why you're contacting me in particular. I think occasionally I'll get an email that just will ask, just am I taking graduate students? And that if that's all they ask, then it's very hard to answer because I train graduate students in multiple graduate programs. So I may not know why that person is asking me. So maybe 5 or 6 sentences is probably the right size. And then if you want to attach more materials like a CV or your personal statement or something, that's good. But just a fairly concise initial statement is really good in an email. At least that's what I like.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I think really, the most common question I get is, are you planning to accept graduate students this year, or are you planning to train graduate students this year? And that's a good question to ask, right? I mean, that is important to know, but it's helpful also. That exchange is a good chance also to get a preview of if somebody says, "Hey, I'm sort of interested in this kind of thing." I can say, yeah, I think that sounds, that sounds good, or I can say, maybe you might consider so and so and so and so our department, right? Because they sound like they might be a great match as well, and so that is helpful as well to hear your interest in that.
I also just want to highlight that we have another faculty member who just joined us briefly. So Malik is here. Malik, would you mind just like saying hello to everyone and giving maybe a brief overview of what you study? Oh, maybe if I can unmute you. Oh, there you go. Great. Oh no, we can't hear you. Okay. Can anyone else hear Malik? Oh no. Okay. Well, if people are interested, maybe we'll like try to figure that out. Yeah. No. Oh man. Oh well. Sorry about. Well, Malik is also here. He's awesome. He just joined us this year, correct, as a faculty member. So yeah, David, Rebecca, I don't know if you have anything else to say, but he's great. Hopefully we can try to figure out your audio issue. Sorry about that. Cool. Great. So we kind of covered general things about, personal statements. Yeah, I don't know, Mihaela, Yutal, if you guys have any other things to add, or I think we covered a lot of things on that front. Nope. Okay, great. Okay, cool. So I'm kind of want to pivot a little bit to talk a little bit more about kind of life in the department. And yeah, so there was a lot of kind of questions that came up about kind of financial support and fellowships and how that works, like whether people apply for external funding or what that type of process is. So I was wondering, David, if you could like talk a little bit about that to begin with.
Sure, I'm happy to. So Brown, if you're admitted at Brown, you're guaranteed 5 years of financial support. What that means is 5 years of tuition, health benefits, as well as a stipend for living. And so that's called the 5-year guarantee. And so there's no, and that's the typical length of a PhD program here. Our program is designed to take 5 years to graduation. So there's not a demand on students to find their own funding, and they are supported. Also, we make it so that funding is not, the student should not be tied to individual faculty member for their funding. Though faculty do support students very often off of grants and so forth, we have funding that allows it so that student isn't dependent upon that faculty member. Now, those funds come from a combination of research assistantships and teaching assistantships. So there's a general requirement we have that all students in our program teach 4 semesters over the 5 years that they're here. We do that, and so some of those would be teaching assistantships during that period. And we actually think that's an important part of training, that's a chance to really learn about teaching, about communicating to others important information. And really, we think regardless of your career path, whether you end up becoming a professor who teaches, obviously it's important for that. But it's actually important almost in every line of work you do. There'll be a point at which you may need to do some teaching. And so it's a really important training experience. Now, many of our students do apply for external fellowships as well. That's a great opportunity to learn about writing grants, to gain, it's a nice award and recognition of your work, and it's an important part of the what our program does. So many students apply for NSF or NDSEG graduate fellowships in their first year. Others will continue to apply for, and there are other fellowships as well that they apply for. Both through government as well as non-government sources and industry sources. There also are students who later apply for advanced fellowships like NRSA fellowships in their 3rd year through NIH. And we've had quite good success, actually. Our students are very competitive for those and typically do well, which is really outstanding. I credit to them.
We had a follow-up question on that in the chat about international students and fellowship funding. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more to that. I'm less familiar with that.
Yeah, that's a good question. International fellowships for international students are more limited. They can't apply for a lot of the the NSF fellowships and so forth. But there are some fellowships, and we have international students applying for those, often through private foundations like the Hertz Foundation. There's a Google fellowship, for instance. There's some things like that some of our students apply for. And what Brown is doing has been at the graduate school level, and we've been a big participant in that, has been compiling a list of those fellowships so that when students come who would like to apply for those, we can go through sort of a matchmaking. It's a bit more difficult because there's so many of them and they have different kinds of objectives, each one. They can go through something of a matchmaking process in terms of trying to match a given student's interest to that fellowship. I want to emphasize again, no one's time at Brown is dependent on being awarded one of these fellowships, right? You're guaranteed the funding whether you get the 5 years of funding, whether you get the fellowship or not. And I should say, even for those students who stay beyond 5 years, we also provide funding. But in terms of the those who want to win one of these awards and want to apply and go through that process, this is now a growing emphasis in the graduate school and something we've been working on.
I think Malik's audio is working now. Are you able to?
Is it? Can people hear me?
Success.
I
Cool.
come up with something to say.
No worries. You just want to do a brief introduction. Yeah.
Okay.
Real quick.
Great. Yeah. Malik Boykin. I'm as Alana said, I'm new faculty here in the CLPS department. I study intergroup relations. Kind of drifting into the world of algorithmic bias and prejudice and things of that nature, as well as some racial identity research. Totally hoping to accept a student this year and looking forward to the rest of the discussion. That's it.
Great. Cool. Thanks for joining us. Oh, I think you are not spotlighted. Sorry about that. Okay, great. Sorry about that. Cool. And then, I actually just want to jump back really quickly. Sorry, back to reaching out to faculty. Sorry, I missed this in the chat really quickly. But in terms of we had questions about how many faculty members should you be reaching out with? And I know advice I was given was you don't want to reach out to everyone because then it seems like you don't have a very direct or more focused and narrowed research interests. So I don't know if people have other suggestions or responses to that of 1 or 2 faculty members that you're super interested in, or advice on that front.
I think my advice would be to, if you're writing to faculty in a specific way, that'll be sort of self-limiting, right? It'll be really hard to send 200 of those, and maybe you have the time to do that, but I think, to some degree that requires taking a look at that faculty's research and thinking about whether you would want to train there and then sending a message appropriately. And I think that that can be self-limiting. I don't want to say don't email lots of faculty you're interested in, because that's great. If there's lots of faculty who are interested you, then maybe we're the right place for you, right? The key is that interest is specific enough that you could express it. If we don't, I think the thing to avoid is an obvious form letter. We do receive those from time to time, where like dear professor, and it's sort of and so that probably is less helpful than a directed email.
Awesome. I have a couple more questions now directed more at the graduate students. Well, I guess this is also a little bit related to faculty as well, but the question was about, like, do PhD students, are they able to kind of lecture in courses, or what is like kind of teacher requirements? And I guess I'll just take that really quickly. There is a requirement that we within the department complete 4 different teaching assistantships, and as part of that, you're also able to like lecture a course. So I TA'd for David once, I'm TAing for my advisor right now, and I got to give a lecture kind of independently, and then you get feedback on it. So if you're really interested in, developing your teaching skills, actually Brown is really a great place. There's a whole like teaching certificate program as well. So there are a lot of opportunities to kind of engage in that if that's something that you're interested in. I'm not quite sure if other people have other follow-ups to that particular question.
I would just say that the Sheridan Center for Teaching and Learning, that certificate program, a lot of my students have gone through it, and it really does prepare them very well for teaching. And the ones who went through most of the certificate program are actually teaching now at universities. And so and I often thought, I wish I could go through those certificate programs, because they end up knowing how to make a syllabus and build a curriculum and develop a teaching profile. These are things that you might need when you eventually go on the job market. So I think that Sheridan Center is a great thing we have here at Brown.
Cool. And then we had some other questions for graduate students about like how much time is kind of spent on research versus coursework, and like what that balance is. So Mahalia or Utah, I don't know if either of you want to take that question. Oh, you need me to unmute you. Okay.
I can talk about kind of at the beginning stages of what that looks like, and then maybe Otay, if you want to jump in about like the 5th year experience. So after the 1st and 2nd year, I would say, it's probably evenly split for research and for coursework. So in your 1st year, you take kind of 2 courses generally, and then the other half of that is research, and one of those courses is your like core course, where you get to meet all the faculty and kind of get a blitz in like all the different areas that people are specialized in. And that was really fun, because they come and like chat to you guys for like the first half hour, and you get kind of like how they got into science, which is always like really fun to hear. And then you get to kind of explore other seminars outside of that as well, that can be kind of anywhere that you and your advisor think that, it'd be good for you to take a course in or gain some expertise. And then, so that's kind of your 1st and your 2nd year. And your 2nd year, you start TAing. And so that I've just started doing that. And I would also add on that one of the things that you get to do outside of TAing is mentorship of the undergrads at Brown. And I would say that's probably, one of the more fun parts of the job that you might not get as much experience with prior to this. So I'm currently mentoring a few undergrads in the lab. And so I get super excited when we like manage like one little thing of like getting a survey working or getting some code written up, where they're like, it just did one thing. But finding like those little exciting moments in science is kind of, I don't know, one of the things that keeps you going on kind of this long-term path. And so passing on that enthusiasm to the undergrads and getting them excited about that is something that the undergrads at Brown that come to work in our labs are equally excited about, finding like the little things that are fun in science. So that's the other like mentorship aspect of it.
Yeah, I feel like my first several years are certainly not as excited as that because probably I constrained myself too much. But actually, I feel like I got a lot of opportunities to do what I want to or what I feel I like to do. Though it's like due to the specific situation of this year, I don't feel like my fifth year experience is as normal as all the previous ones. Most of my time was spent on trying to figure out what online testing systems will work and what will not. But I feel like the experience is generally very good. I stress like I feel like a very specific point that I like during my few years here is that I can always get various kinds of feedback on my research from totally different perspectives. So like my project is basically focusing on some specific aspects in psycholinguistics, but I always get like very interesting feedbacks, very interesting comments from say formal linguistics or even from like other areas like false beliefs or many more. So yeah, I don't know if that's tightly related, but I just want to share this piece of experience with you.
Yeah, awesome. That actually brings me into my next question. People had questions about, what is the relationship between, students and advisors and like the relationship with other professors within the department. Like, do you just have one advisor? Because normally, when you apply, you join a specific lab. And as you said, there's a lot of interaction with other professors. And I know I personally, interact a lot with, we have committee members, both for you have a first year project and for your dissertation and for your prelim as well, where you really get to engage with many different professors, both in the department and outside the department. So I, for instance, have people in my committee, both internally in CLPS and also in neuroscience and in computer science. And so there's also that kind of added flexibility. And also just in terms of like coursework too, I think there's a lot of flexibility in CLPS. I've taken a lot of classes in applied mathematics or in CS, which like kind of count as requirements, which I think is the really added benefit of this program, that you really get to kind of interact internally and externally and not just with your one advisor one-on-one all the time, even though they're great, but it's good to have external perspectives and other perspectives, as you said. Yeah, Mahalia, I don't know if you have any follow-ups to that. No, I don't know. I have to keep unmuting you.
Yeah, I would just say, even this past year, I took a course that I think was technically in the neuroscience department, which was really fun to get kind of down to the molecular level. And there have even been like students in our class where graduate students who are like, oh, you're in the CLPS department. They're like, no, I'm in the neuro. So I would say that like we again extend outside of our department and interact with other lots of like the graduate students in other departments as well.
Yeah, and I also have like several, like one for each external committee member on my prelim committee and dissertation committee, and they're different, so quite cool.
Awesome. Cool. So I guess some other questions we had too about, we had some general like questions about like, what's the kind of the greatest struggle or, thing about, being a graduate student in our particular departments and also what's like the most positive aspect. So I guess personally for me, just in terms of being a grad student in general during COVID, time management is a thing, especially because there are so many opportunities and still so many talks. And it feels like my Zoom meetings, I'm on all the time. So I feel like that does make it a little bit difficult, but I also feel like that's almost like a pro of the department as well. As we've said, we're going to say interdisciplinary a lot today. So I don't know if Mahalia and Yutal, you have other perspectives on that.
Well, I guess one of the problems or issues that every graduate student will experience is getting stuck with their research. So, and this is just something that we can follow up on the previous discussion, is that we have so many opportunities, and whenever you're getting stuck, you can actually go to different people, different faculty members, and get their feedback, and they can provide like totally new ideas that you've never thought about. So
yeah. Cool. Mahala, do you have anything else to add to that? No.
No, I didn't have anything else to add.
Okay, great. We also have a couple people in the chat asking about the open curriculum. So we were going to say this at the end, but I guess just a really brief overview. There is like an option within Brown to apply for like a 6-year funding if you wanted to do a master's in another department. And so it is a unique thing about the Brown graduate school in general. You can still pursue actually like a master's in another department as well. So it's very typical in CLPS for people to do this in like applied math and in computer science. Yeah, I know a couple people in those programs. And so then there's also the like formally applying for this 6-year funding, which I think is like a whole other thing. But a lot of times people end up just taking additional classes if that's something that people are interested in, and it's, you talk to your advisor about it, and then that's something that like seems to help you integrate across different departments. So just to briefly flag that. Cool, I guess I really briefly want to talk to you, and just in terms of like general, life in Providence. Going back to what Rebecca kind of highlighted in the beginning about like living in Providence. My background is the walking bridge and pedestrian bridge in Providence. I personally find it to be a really great city to live in, and I really love it. There's a bunch of farmers markets and it's wonderful. So yeah, Rebecca, I don't know if you have anything, since we are down to like last couple minutes, that you want to talk about.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I just think Providence is really a gem of a city. Like you were saying, you're sitting in front of that very cool bridge, and there's the beautiful river, and near campus there are museums and great food, and it's also not especially when the pandemic is taken care of. We're about an hour by train from Boston and 3.5 hours by train from New York. And also you can get, Rhode Island is a small state, and in fact, we also have the highest coastline per capita. It's got an interesting history that you could delve into. There are ways to get around if you don't have a car. So if you come to graduate school here, we encourage you to sometimes get out of the lab and go explore your new surroundings.
Awesome. Cool. And then, does anyone else have anything to say about in terms of just like general culture or living within the department or like within Providence as a whole?
Yeah, there are several great bike paths around, so try them out.
Yeah, the bike path's great. Malik, were you gonna say something? Oh no, I can't hear you again. No. Wait, let me try removing the spotlight and adding it again. Okay, can you try unmuting yourself again? No. No. Okay, well, nope. I think you're still muted. No.
Oh, there he goes.
You're unmuted, but we can't hear you.
I don't know. It's so sad. Do you like Providence? Well, maybe we can follow up with more details at some point. We'll add it to whenever we share the video. Cool. I guess in the last couple of minutes, I'm trying to think if there's any other. We had some other questions too about when do students typically publish as well, like when their first publication ends up coming out. And I, at least from my perspective, that seems to be pretty dependent on like what other subdiscipline or what field you actually are in, because CLPS has just so many different, people are doing animal studies up to like very like virtual reality work. There's a lot of things in between. So I think the publication rate, it's hard to like say for certain exactly what that is.
I mean, I will say though, that's all very true. Like, there's not a time when publications come out, but our students do do tend to publish well, and I mean, and that's a part of building a scientific career, and that is an important aspect, right, of what we do. So one of the things we do in the very first year, students in psychology and cognitive science do a first-year project. In linguistics, you do something called a QP, or qualifying project, which takes 2 years. But the goal of that first-year project is just to get you off the ground doing research right off the bat. So, and often that's something close to what your first-year project advisor is already doing. So, it's not like you have to come in with a fully formed project, right, ready to go. That happens, but it's not very common. But really the goal is just to start doing research right from the beginning. So, doing research and moving towards publication is an important aspect of what we do. And our students tend to be very successful at that.
Yeah, actually, I think linguistic students have the choice to present at the same time as Cog Sci and Psych people. And I'd say it's a great opportunity to get feedback out of your field. And if you ever have a chance, please do that.
Awesome. Cool. So I think the kind of last kind of question I want to end with is, because we're running out of time, but we had some questions about like, what kind of qualities really help people excel at Brown, and specifically in our program and in CLPS. So just open to both faculty and to graduate students. So what would be your opinion on that question?
I would say that one quality that I've found useful in myself and my graduate students, and sometimes I have to encourage it in myself, is to enjoy the process. Because we talked a little bit about research, about getting stuck, but actually a lot of research is problem solving or figuring out how you can do what you want to do. And I think and someone mentioned this sort of small steps that you solve a problem, and that's great. Now you can do the study, right? And so I think enjoying the process, the solving the problems, and the doing of the research is really important.
I mean, I'll just add to that. I don't think it's a requirement by any means, but I do think intellectual openness is it makes the process a lot of fun, right? If people who are really curious and most people who go into sciences are, right, and who are open to other people's ideas, approaches, backgrounds, perspectives, everything else, I think just allows you to really take advantage of what we have to offer. And I think it makes it, you'll have a lot of fun here. It's actually, and graduate school is a lot of fun if you approach it with that kind of intellectual openness.
And I do think you can foster your curiosity. Sometimes, when you're in college, you have to focus on your courses, you have to focus on certain things. And sometimes that your natural curiosity gets kind of dampened. Well, this is the time to start enhancing it and fostering it and opening up, like David was saying, to new ideas.
Great. Any other thoughts? We're at 4 o'clock right now. I see some people heading out. Great. So yeah, excited to hopefully have people apply this round and chat with people later. Yeah, feel free to reach out to, I'm going to say on behalf of the graduate students, to reach out to us if you have any further questions. And I'm sure faculty will also be happy to answer your questions. I guess in terms of like, since we're in a weird state of COVID, I guess one thing we didn't address is our application cycle is just normal as it normally is. We're not taking any less students because of COVID. And same with like, international students, that like is all the same kind of process and nothing is different this round. So just to address that. And yeah, if you have any other further questions, feel free to email us. But thank you for attending. And thank you to all the panelists who took time out of their day to do this. So, all right.
Thank you, Alana. That was great.
Bye, everyone.